today to share my story. It's crazy to me that I'm here standing in front of all of you, about to share something that was once my deepest, darkest secret. A secret that my life depended on keeping. I may not look like your typical domestic violence survivor. I have a good educational background. I have a loving family that supports me. I'm independent and I stand up for what I believe in. But domestic violence can happen to anyone. It happens in all races, all religions, all income and education levels. It's everywhere, and it does not discriminate. I would have told you myself that I would be the last person on earth to stay with a man who beats me. But in fact, I was a typical victim because of my age. I was 24. Women between the ages of 16 and 24 are 3 times as likely to be victims of domestic violence. And over 500 of those women are killed every year by abusive partners, boyfriends, and husbands in the US. I was a typical victim because I knew nothing about domestic violence, its warning signs, or its patterns. Someone once described an analogy to me, that an abusive relationship was like going on a hike in a forest. You start on this hike, excited for the beauty you will experience. As you start down the marked path, you feel free, happy, breathing in the fresh air, taking in all of nature surrounding you. You start eagerly hiking. All of a sudden, the path isn't as clear, and you take a turn. Little do you know that that turn is a wrong turn, off of that marked path. But you keep walking, confident that you are going the right way. Then you take another wrong turn. A little unsure now, but you keep going. And then another, and another. You look up and you don't recognize anything around you, but you keep going. Another turn, and another. Finally, you're completely lost. Nowhere to turn, but everywhere to turn all at the same time. That feeling of freedom and happiness that you had when you started this hike has now turned into fear and terror. A captive to the beauty that once surrounded you. As I tell you my story, I want you to keep this image of the hike in the back of your mind. My story starts 4 years ago. I moved to the city of San Francisco the year prior from my small country town of Waimanalo on the island of Oahu, and I was still trying to find my way. I've played sports my whole life, so I decided I needed to get back into something new. So I walked down the road to a jiu-jitsu gym. The owner and coach, Jimmy Harkeen, greeted me with open arms. He was the most in-shape person I've ever seen. And although he was intimidating, standing there in his white gi with his black belt tied around his waist, he was charming, and he made me feel right at home. 3 months into training, we started to date. He impressed me with all of his knowledge of martial arts and his many years of experience. And he idolized me. See, Jimmy created this illusion that I was the dominant partner. He loved that I was smart, that I had a good job, a good education, and he told me I had the potential to be a champion in jiu-jitsu if I put my heart to it. This was the beginning of my hike in that forest. Little did I know that the first stage in a domestic violence relationship is to seduce and charm the victim. The next several months were filled with work, then training, then relaxing at my place. I trained with him every day. I fell in love with jiu-jitsu as I fell in love with him. I entered every competition that I could, and I kept winning, just like he said. I didn't have time for anything else, and I was happy. My family, an ocean away, were happy for me. When they came to visit me to watch one of my competitions, they saw how happy I was, how good my boyfriend and coach treated me. And they were excited to see me back in my old ways of working hard and succeeding in a sport that I loved. Little did I know that the second stage of a domestic violence relationship is isolation. I didn't hang out with my friends anymore. I would train before work and right after work. And on the weekends, I was too tired and I needed to rest my body. That's the sacrifice you take when you want to be great at something, right? This was my first wrong turn off of that marked path. The third stage of an abusive relationship is to introduce the threat of violence and control and see how the victim reacts. It was my friend's birthday and she wanted to have a night out on the town. Of course I wanted to go, so I told Jimmy the plans. His reaction was one that I didn't expect. He told me I better not wear one of those slutty dresses that I used to, and his woman wasn't going anywhere without him. I was taken back, but thought, he loves me and just wants to protect me. So, I told my friends he was joining us, and we went out and had a good night. My next wrong turn. A couple of months passed, and he started to become more and more controlling. But nothing physical, and I didn't feel in danger, so I kept telling myself it was because he loved me and he wanted to protect me. Another turn. There was another night that my friends wanted to go out. So I asked him if he wanted to take the night off of training and have some fun. He agreed, so we met my friends out at a club. Shortly after we got there, he started to whisper in my ear that he saw me check out the guy at the front door as we walked in. I told him I didn't, but he wouldn't let it go. As the night went on, he kept asking me if I'd rather be with that guy. Finally, I told him to stop and leave me alone. I started to walk away, but he grabbed my arm, turned me around, and backhanded me in my face. Shocked, I ran outside to call a cab, but he was right behind me and jumped in with me. As we got to my place, I told him to leave, but he forced his way in. So I sat on my stairs, not wanting him to go any further, but he started to drag me up. I tried to get him to stop, but he reached over and punched me 3 times in my face. I screamed for him to leave, so he got up and left. The next morning, he came over, he apologized profusely, he brought me flowers and told me he would never do that again. So I forgave him. Another wrong turn. A few more months passed and there were no incidents. It was back to the life I knew of working and training. See, despite what had happened, I was sure we were supposed to be together. It was an isolated incident. Then, after one late night in the gym and everyone else has left, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. Although there was a knot somewhere deep in my stomach, I ignored it and I said yes. Little did I know, I was falling into his vicious, deceitful, hateful, and violent trap. You see, it was after we were engaged that Jimmy knew he had me. I was completely isolated from my friends and family. I knew that if I went out, we would most likely get into a fight and it would end badly, so I didn't. I knew that as long as I did what I knew he wanted, we could possibly be happy. I was officially and completely lost in that forest, a captive to the beauty that once surrounded me. The next 6 months were the worst of my life. The power, control, manipulation, and violence escalated almost daily. I became a shell of myself. I was his captive. I was convinced everything was my fault, and he had complete control over me through constant lies, manipulation, and violence. I knew that if I had told anyone about this and he found out, he would get extremely angry and probably hurt me. So I kept this dark, evil secret to myself. The abuse was constant, happening at all hours, when he was sober or drunk. He would drop me off and pick me up at the Black Rock office every day, verbally abusing me and often physically abusing me along the way. I would walk into work, drying my tears in the bathroom before going up to my desk to make sure that no one would ask me what was wrong. I lost count of the slaps, the shoves, and the punches. I lost count of the bruises that I tried my best to hide. Bruises that if anyone had asked, I would lie and say they were from training. I was woken up in the middle of the night by getting headbutted. There were numerous times we were in the car and he would punch me and threaten to run us off the road. There was a time I was punched so hard in my head and then in my ribs as I was using the restroom that it threw me off the toilet. And as I backed away and hid in the shower to get away from him, he turned on the hot water to force me out. Those nights, after abusing me verbally and physically, he would then abuse me sexually, forcing himself on me and raping me. There were times I contemplated taking my own life, thinking that it was the only way to escape his pain. Those 6 months were the darkest and loneliest of my life. Now some of you still may be thinking, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she endure all of that pain? Why didn't she just call the police? It's because the survivors know something that you don't. That it is extremely dangerous to leave an abuser. More dangerous than it is staying with them and enduring the abuse. Women are 70 times more likely to be murdered in the few weeks after leaving her abusive partner than at any other time in the relationship. I was surviving in the best way that I knew how. I was finally able to leave after one extremely sadistic beating. Jimmy had been out drinking throughout the day and started asking me about a guy I dated before him. I told him it meant nothing, but he kept at it. He was down the hall standing by my small guest bathroom and called me over to him. I walked over and he pushed me in. Trapped in this tiny bathroom with him guarding the door, he started to yell at me. And then he started to threaten to kill me. And then he started to beat me. I don't remember how many times he punched me in my face, in my head, and in my body as I started to black out. I remember looking up in between the punches and seeing blood splattered across the wall. I realized my nose was bleeding everywhere as he continued to punch me. I'm not sure how long this lasted, but for some reason he finally stopped. He told me to go wash up. So I staggered up to my room and then my bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror and I realized in that moment that if I did not leave, he would kill me. So I walked into my room, I put on warm clothes, I grabbed my phone and my wallet, and I ran out the door. And I kept running. That night, I stayed at a shelter. The next day, I went to the hospital where I was forced to tell my secret. Although it was one of the worst nights of my life, it was also one of the best. I am beyond thankful that I escaped with my life, when tragically, others have not. And I forever broke free from that dark, evil world that he trapped me in. The amount of support I received from my family, my friends, and my Black Rock family was life-changing. It was what got me back up on my feet. I am not sure where I would be in my career, or if I would even have a career right now, if it wasn't for the support that Black Rock gave me. They let me ease back into work when I was ready. They let me take time off to be with my loved ones. Black Rock Security made sure that I felt safe at all working hours. The head of security in the San Francisco office, Barney Villa, even met me at the gate as I got off the plane returning back from Hawaii. Excuse me. And over the next year, Barney accompanied me to every single court date to make sure that I felt as safe as I could as I faced Jimmy. security officers, about the support and resources that are available to us at this firm. Support that was priceless to me at a point in time in my life when I needed it the most. The next speaker I'm about to introduce represents a nonprofit that we work with that have a story of their own. One Love was founded in 2010 in remembrance of a loving daughter and sister who tragically lost her life a couple of months before graduating from the University of Virginia because she was beaten to death by her ex-boyfriend. One Love's goal is to spread awareness and education about healthy and unhealthy relationships, because knowing the signs early on could mean the difference between life and death. Maybe if I had heard a presentation like this and learned the warning signs, maybe I wouldn't have gone through what I did. But I cannot change my past. I can only learn from it and share my lessons in hopes that I can even just save one other person from having a similar story to mine. I want to change society's question of why does she stay to why does he do that? My one ask of you today is to listen to what my friend Erica has to say and share this knowledge with others. Abuse only thrives in silence. So let's break the silence, because you never know what your coworker sitting at the desk next to you might be going through, and you may have the knowledge to help. With that, I'd like to introduce Erica.